with Open Mic at radiotribune.com. And we're going to have another session here. And we're going to touch on some pretty sensitive stuff that I've just learned. But before anything else, and this is probably one of the best parts of my show, I like to read the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics to you. This is a very important document that the majority of all police officers in the United States agree to, and they take their oath to, and they swear by it. It's amazing that all they have to do is just follow it, and everybody else in the police department follow this oath, and we wouldn't have the problems that we're having right now. Seems so. So, as a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve mankind, to safeguard lives and property, to protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and the peaceful against violence or disorder, and to respect the constitutional rights of all men to liberty, equality, and justice. I will keep my private life unsullied as an example to all, maintain courageous calm in the face of danger, scorn, or ridicule, develop self-restraint, and be constantly mindful of the welfare of others. Honest in thought and deed in both my personal and official life, I will be exemplary in obeying the laws of the land and the regulations of my department. Whatever I see or hear of a confidential nature, or that is confided to me in my official capacity, will be kept ever secret unless revelation is necessary in the performance of my duty. I will never act officiously or permit personal feelings, prejudices, animosities, or friendships to influence my decisions. With no compromise for crime and with relentless prosecution of criminals, I will enforce the law courteously and appropriately without fear or favor, malice or ill will, never employing unnecessary force or violence, and never accepting gratuities. It's kind of a biggie. I recognize the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith, and I accept it as a public trust to be held so long as I am true to the ethics of the police service. I will constantly strive to achieve these objectives and ideals, dedicating myself before God to my chosen profession, law enforcement. Pretty powerful words, folks. If only our police officers throughout the country would follow that oath, and that is a sacred oath for police officers. For if they ever fail to follow every portion, any portion of that oath, well, I'll pray for them, because they will enter into a world of deception and greed and avarice, and a world that by their masters, they will have to obey every unlawful order that's given to them, or else they'll pay the price. So I've learned some new stuff just through rumor and through my contacts with the LVMPD, some of the employees that are still at least allowed to talk to me. Of course, I don't know if you know this or not, but a gag order has been put on all employees of the LVMPD to not communicate with me, at least openly anyway, or else they'll face the wrath of either being targeted or an unlawful termination, just like I was. But before we go further, I wanted to reaffirm Amendment number 1 in the Bill of Rights and Amendment number 2, which ensures that Amendment number 1 and all the other Bill of Rights that we have under our Constitution, it affirms that Amendment number 2 makes sure that all the others are followed. So, Amendment number 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Pretty important, folks. And we are seeing this time and time again, that these amendments are being abridged. So Amendment number 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now we're seeing more and more of this happening, especially the latest bills that are being enacted, or not enacted, but being presented in Congress. One of them, oh, I thought this was a real gem. Anybody who owns a firearm may have to purchase insurance, liability insurance, if you own a firearm, on each and every firearm. Now that's a real kick in the head. But at least the open carry law, which the Second Amendment basically says that every person has a right to bear arms, at least that's being more affirmed throughout more and more states. Let's hope that this continues. So, what I've heard lately, and again, this is just a rumor, and I haven't been able to confirm it directly with the person that's been aggrieved, is that my sources tell me that longtime Detective Teresa Coleman, who just recently retired in May of 2015, and I might add forcibly retired, has been also denied her badge, her retirement badge, and police credentials. Now this probably adds to about the 25 other police officers that have honorably retired from the police department after spending most of their lives supporting a career and serving our community. But for some reason, the former sheriff, Doug Gillespie, and his current clone, Sheriff Joe Lombardo, have decided that they are going to withhold Detective Teresa Coleman's retirement credentials for some unholy reason. I don't know. Now, I've known Teresa Coleman for the past 20, 25 years, and I can attest to you that she is a honorable, trustworthy, and loyal employee to the LVMPD. And she has a spotless record with a very high work ethic. For some reason, according to my sources, the current administration, Sheriff Joe Lombardo, and the police administration and all his drones have decided to manufacture an internal affairs complaint against Detective Teresa Coleman that is totally unwarranted, totally manufactured, and phony for some reason. Now, my question is why? Why do something against a longtime, honorable person like Detective Teresa Coleman and deny her rightfully her retirement credentials, which some of you may not seem to be all that important, All it really does is allow her to carry a weapon concealed throughout the 50 states and is authorized to carry that weapon. So what is it? What is it that the department wants to hold against her? Well, I did my investigation and I came up with some sources, even though I tried relentlessly to get a hold of Detective Teresa Coleman and was unable to do so. But my sources tell me that are close to Teresa Coleman is that between the years 2007 and 2009, there were some political appointments of unfit individuals to the position of police officers. Now, this is just despicable if it's true. The rumors say, and the sources say, that former Sheriff Doug Gillespie ordered, allegedly, Detective Teresa Coleman to approve an unfit police applicant to go to the academy under his direct orders. Now, this is unbelievable. It's insane. Here you have a police officer that is specifically assigned to the Personnel Bureau, specifically assigned to the background checks and examination of potential candidates for police officer. And she writes out a report, allegedly, that says that this applicant is not fit, either morally, ethically, or has a record or a history that does not meet the minimum standards set forth by the police department to become a police officer. Now, if my sources are correct, Teresa Coleman was ordered by former Sheriff Doug Gillespie to hire this individual that she specifically did the records check and history and background check on, and it was under her opinion that this person was totally unfit to be a police officer. But the sheriff intervened, former Sheriff Doug Gillespie intervened and ordered her to put her stamp of approval on this person so that this person could enter into the police academy. Well, astonishingly, and I just can't even believe this happened, that person that was politically appointed and allowed to go into the police academy was terminated later in the police academy by information and for cause by the instructors in the police academy. Well, unbelievably, this person retested immediately, which there is a stay period after you are terminated from the police academy, but this person had special juice by former Sheriff Doug Gillespie to retest and then be admitted to the police academy. Now, this is after, again, another background check, which indicated an unfit person who was also terminated from the previous police academy is now allowed to go back into the police academy. Well, I'm sure that favors are doing this, and this person made it through the police academy, made it through probation, and is now a fully qualified, well, I shouldn't say fully qualified, I should say fully compensated police officer for the LVMPD. Now, maybe this is what is the reason behind targeting Detective Teresa Coleman prior to her retirement, manufacturing false internal affairs complaints, leading up to a pre-termination board, which basically forced her to resign prior to that pre-termination board, which we all know is one big fix, because once you go to a pre-termination board in the LVMPD, you're pretty much history and are going to be kicking stones down the road, because the police department will terminate anybody they feel does not drink the Kool-Aid. And obviously, Detective Teresa Coleman did not drink the Kool-Aid. So here we have it. Here we have yet another, and this is only one that I've heard about. I can't wait until I can contact Detective Teresa Coleman and find out what's going on and find out if it is true. And if it is true, please, Jesus, Lord in heaven, I hope she has documentation, written documentation that this occurred. Because that, folks, is called malfeasance. Malfeasance, wrongful acts and deeds done by elected individuals. That's what malfeasance is. And if former Detective Teresa Coleman has documentation that supports the fact that former Sheriff Doug Gillespie made a political appointment of an individual, an unfit individual, to the police academy and help perpetuate his graduation from the police academy and eventual full police officer status, even though this person was deemed unfit and terminated prior to his appointment to, and terminated from the police academy prior to his appointment as a police officer, then folks, you know what? We got a real problem in this community. Our community is put at risk and danger because of a political appointment. And understand the position of a police officer is absolutely immense. The power that he has and the ramifications of an unfit person to hold the position of a police officer in our community puts us all at risk and danger. And that's totally unnecessary. A federal complaint, if those documents exist, and of course I've got to do a lot more investigating to find out if they do exist, and if they do, in my opinion, that's a perfect basis for a federal complaint. A federal complaint that would be posed against former Sheriff Doug Gillespie and current Sheriff Joe Lombardo, because he in fact supported the process, the unfair process against Detective Teresa Coleman. The internal affairs complaints that were manufactured, the manufactured pre-termination hearing, and essentially, folks, in the police world, the denial of your police credentials. Oh, it ain't that big a thing, but in the police world, it's like getting stabbed in the back with a dirty knife. This is unfair, and this is especially if it's true. If it's true that we have political appointments, and I'm positive that this is true, at least for one instance. I don't know how many other instances that have occurred where a political appointment to the position of a police officer in the LVMPD has been done. But I guarantee you I'm going to find out. And if that's so, then criminal charges need to be brought against both former Sheriff Doug Gillespie and current Sheriff Joe Lombardo, because he is allowing this to occur. He is allowing the unlawful termination of Detective Teresa Coleman. He's allowing the retaliation against Detective Teresa Coleman. So keep that in mind, folks. I know about this because I was targeted and I was unlawfully terminated by the regime of former Sheriff Doug Gillespie. Manufactured IAB complaints. If you can believe it, the charge was having a messy desk, for which they're the ones that were responsible for it because they are the ones that ransacked my police working desk. And then they manufactured a internal affairs complaint that said I had a messy desk. Oh, that's just lovely. That's just perfect. 32 criminal cases down the drain, destroyed or manipulated. And 2 of those cases had to do with the complicity of the LVMPD regarding 2 murders that they were complicit in and covered up. One of them being against LVMPD Officer Kevin Daly in 2007, and another being a registered narcotics informant in 1996, whereby information came directly from the narcotics section of the LVMPD to known drug dealers about an informant that the LVMPD was receiving information about. I'm sure the name White Fence may mean something to some of you out there. White Fence is a behind-the-scenes internal drug operation that emanates out of LA, between LA and Las Vegas. That's an old drug connection. Well, White Fence may be involved in this. Anyway, this registered narcotics informant with the LVMPD is set up to be murdered up in Alamo in April of 1996. I was working on this case since 2001, and I found that the LVMPD was complicit in this murder. Now, believe what you want, but all efforts to stop me from investigating this case was put in place, and eventually I was targeted. I even offered with my own money to continue the investigation in this case, and I was denied. I have 3 suspects that are named, one of them being an informant. I know where the murder occurred. It's a summer cabin in Alamo. I know where the grave was. And I know how and why the execution occurred. I've got blood samples. I've got tissue samples. I've got bullet holes. I've got the chair that the suspect or the victim was restrained in. And I've got the identities of the people who did it. But the added part was one of the shooters that killed the victim had a copy of an LVMPD registered narcotics informant worksheet in his hand prior to killing that informant. It's ugly, folks. Now, I've got lots of evidence that supports this murder. I've got videotapes, audio tapes of informants that depict this murder. Well, you can bet your boots all of this just suddenly disappeared when my desk was ransacked in November of 2010. So, it's ugly, folks. It's ugly, but this is just yet another example, this denial of police credentials. And is that supposed to quiet Detective Teresa Coleman down, that she won't come out with this information about these political appointments? I don't know. Maybe so. So we'll see after our break, and we'll go into another avenue of what's about to be exposed in the LVMPD, of all the corruption and the cancer infestation. So I'll see you in a few minutes.